Imagine a place where the fate of nations is determined by its position on the globe, a place that holds the key to America's defense against the world's most powerful adversaries. Now, picture the United States securing its future by claiming this pivotal land. The place, Greenland. President Donald Trump boldly posted on Truth Social, "The United States needs Greenland for the purpose of national security. It is vital for the Golden Dome that we are building." And he's not wrong. Greenland's significance extends far beyond its icy landscape. If you were to look at the world from above the North Pole, you'd see Greenland's eastern coast standing guard, serving as a critical gate to the Atlantic for Russian nuclear submarines. Its importance is clear. Without Greenland, the Golden Dome missile shield the U.S. is building wouldn't be possible. But this is more than just geography. It's a battlefront, a line of defense against rising global tensions. Greenland doesn't just sit there, it watches over the skies, the oceans, and the future of U.S. security. And here's the thing, Greenland could change the course of history for the U.S. military, for NATO, for global power dynamics. It's not just about an island, it's about survival. Are we prepared to let this strategic advantage slip away? Or will the Golden Dome rise to protect us no matter what? Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning. If you're intrigued by how Greenland fits into this puzzle, you'll want to understand the full story. Stick around, because the stakes are higher than ever. To truly grasp why Greenland is so crucial, we need to understand its strategic location. Take a globe, look down from the North Pole. Right there you'll find Greenland, a colossal landmass sitting at the crossroads of North America, Europe, and Russia. It's not just an isolated island. Greenland lies in the middle of what's known as the Greenland-Iceland United Kingdom, GIUK gap, the critical maritime choke point through which any Russian submarine must pass to enter the Atlantic Ocean. This gap is America's first line of defense against Russian nuclear threats. Without Greenland, the U.S. loses an irreplaceable advantage, the ability to track and intercept missiles from Russia or China before they can reach the homeland. And it's not just about military tactics. Greenland's radar systems are among the world's most important. The U.S. operates cutting-edge early warning radars there, giving us a vital window into the flight paths of potential threats. This radar system scans a massive swath of the sky, covering the paths of missiles and bombers launched by Russia or China. If Greenland falls into the wrong hands, we lose sight of those missiles long before they can strike. Greenland's role is the bedrock of U.S. defense in the Arctic region, a region where control is increasingly contested. If we lose access to this land, we lose control of the skies and waters that keep us safe from nuclear threats. So, what's at stake here? For the U.S., this isn't just a geopolitical game. It's about securing the future of American defense. And that's why this story isn't over yet. Stay with me to uncover the next chapter. To understand why Greenland is so important today, we need to look back at its long history in global defense. For decades, Greenland has served as a strategic outpost for the United States. But the story begins long before the Trump administration. In the Cold War era, the US and NATO built a network of military bases across Greenland. These were critical for monitoring Soviet activity, including nuclear missile threats and the movement of Russian submarines. The Thule Air Base in particular was pivotal as an early warning radar station to detect incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Even after the Cold War ended, Greenland remained essential to the U.S. defense strategy. The global balance of power shifted, but the need for early warning systems didn't. In fact, it became even more important as new threats emerged from Russia and China, nations eager to push boundaries in the Arctic region and elsewhere. In 2019, President Trump raised eyebrows when he publicly floated the idea of buying Greenland. This was not just a random thought, it was a reflection of the reality that the U.S. and its allies couldn't afford to let Greenland slip away. If Greenland were to fall into the hands of an adversary, the consequences would be severe. Not only would it jeopardize military surveillance, but it would also give China and Russia a foothold in the highly strategic Arctic. The idea of purchasing Greenland was controversial, but it underscored an important truth. Greenland is the ultimate real estate for global security. The US recognized this decades ago, and now in a rapidly changing world, it's more important than ever. Now that we understand the history, let's look at the looming crises that could make this situation even more urgent. Stay tuned to see what's at stake for the future of Greenland and global security. The world is changing fast, and so are the threats. In 2024, China made a bold move by sending 3 icebreakers into the Arctic, a clear signal that they were expanding their presence in the region. But it didn't stop there. Last summer, a Chinese research submarine ventured beneath the Arctic ice, exploring new paths of geostrategic influence. This wasn't just a scientific mission, it was a military maneuver in disguise. And then in 2025, China took another step by sending a container ship from China to Britain via the Polar Silk Road, a direct route through the Arctic. This is more than just shipping lanes, it's about control. China's investment in nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines is ramping up, and their new Type 096 submarines have been designed with a stronger hull to operate in icy Arctic conditions. Now, imagine the implications. If China can navigate the Arctic with ease, US military bases and critical infrastructure are suddenly within range. That means America's satellites, its military bases, and its data centers, vital for the nation's defense, are all at risk. This is no longer just about watching from a distance. This is about the vulnerabilities that come with China's growing ambitions. As China inches closer to controlling the Arctic, the US military faces a critical moment. The question is clear: will America defend its interests in the Arctic, or will we allow China and Russia to set the stage for a new Cold War in the North? The situation is escalating. If Greenland is lost, the consequences for US security could be catastrophic. But the pressure isn't just from China. Stay tuned, because Russia has its own plans. Behind the headlines and bold moves, there are invisible forces at play. To understand the urgency of the situation, we need to look at the mechanisms that make Greenland and the Arctic so vital for national security. It's not just about icebreakers or submarines, it's about data, surveillance, and the technology that keeps the world's military power balanced. The Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom GIUK gap isn't just a point on the map, it's a vital sensor network for early missile detection. From Greenland, the US Space Force operates a highly sensitive radar system that can spot intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, as they launch. This system offers an invaluable early warning capability, providing the US with critical minutes to respond to a potential attack. But this isn't all. Greenland also serves as a launch point for satellite tracking, a key component in space defense. The satellites tracking threats from Russia or China rely on Greenland's strategic location to remain in orbit and maintain constant surveillance. If that access is cut off, the US will be left blind to space-based threats, and with emerging technologies like hypersonic missiles and cyber warfare, that's a risk we can't afford. Then there's the military footprint in Greenland. The US and NATO forces rely heavily on Pituffik Space Base, home to some of the most sophisticated surveillance equipment in the world. Without this base, the US would lose its ability to monitor the Arctic in real time, and without that, the Arctic becomes a free-for-all for adversaries. These hidden mechanisms form the backbone of US defense in the region. They keep us informed, connected, and ready. But China and Russia are working to dismantle this advantage by expanding their own presence in the Arctic. These mechanisms are the silent sentinels of US defense. But what happens if they fail? Stay tuned to see the next shockwave that could change everything. The situation in Greenland is becoming even more precarious. In 2017, Greenland's Prime Minister made a shocking move. She flew to Beijing and asked China to invest in building new airports on the island. It wasn't just an economic opportunity, it was a strategic gambit by China to gain influence in the Arctic. The deal was stopped by Denmark, but the very fact that it nearly happened reveals the vulnerabilities of Greenland's sovereignty. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a signal that Greenland could fall into the hands of powers that don't share the US or NATO's interests. If Greenland were to strengthen ties with China, it would be more than just a political pivot. It would give China the foothold it needs to challenge the US in the Arctic and beyond. The threat isn't over. If Greenland were to drift closer to China, the US would lose access to crucial military bases and China would gain the ability to influence the GIUK gap, the very choke point that Russia and China depend on for access to the Atlantic. The stakes are clear. Greenland is standing at a crossroads, and how it chooses to navigate its relationships will determine its future, along with the future of US defense in the region. China is waiting, watching, and ready to strike if the opportunity presents itself. This is more than just politics. This is about the future of our defense. If Greenland tilts toward China again, the consequences will be catastrophic. But the US is far from done. Stay tuned to see how NATO and Denmark are responding to this growing crisis. For the people of Greenland, this is not just a political debate. It's a daily reality that could determine the future of their homes, their families, and their culture. Greenland's relationship with the world is shifting, and the decisions made today could shape the lives of Greenlanders for generations. As the US and China battle for influence, Greenlanders are left to navigate between two competing powers. Greenland's independence is important to its people, but economic pressures are mounting. Greenland relies heavily on Denmark for political and financial support, and the reality is that Greenland cannot afford to alienate global powers, especially the US. But what does it mean for the people living there? If Greenland aligns too closely with China, it could face economic isolation from the West. That's not just a theoretical risk. It could lead to a decline in the standard of living, job losses, and economic instability. For many Greenlanders, the choice is clear: protect their sovereignty while maintaining a strong economic alliance with the US. However, there's another challenge. As the Arctic becomes a geopolitical battleground, the very climate that makes Greenland so vital is changing. Melting ice opens new shipping lanes and mining opportunities, but it also means Greenland will become more accessible to adversaries. The people of Greenland will face a double-edged sword: economic opportunities driven by foreign investments, but at the cost of their national security. The question is, what kind of future do the people of Greenland want to build? And how much are they willing to sacrifice to maintain control over their destiny? The people of Greenland face a tough decision, one that could reshape their future. What will they choose? The world is watching closely. Stay tuned, because the next chapter could be the most pivotal yet. What happens in Greenland doesn't stay in Greenland. It sends ripples across the world, influencing the balance of power and reshaping the very fabric of global alliances. Greenland's geopolitical importance isn't just a concern for the US or Denmark. It impacts the entire world, especially in the context of the growing Arctic competition. In recent months, NATO has stepped up its presence in the high north. Denmark has committed resources to enhance its Arctic capabilities, including icebreakers and advanced anti-submarine warfare technologies. The world is increasingly realizing the importance of maintaining stability in the Arctic, a region that has the potential to become the next flashpoint in global conflict. At the same time, Russia and China are not sitting idly by. As China expands its military presence in the Arctic, it threatens to disrupt the balance of power. Russia, meanwhile, continues to build its nuclear submarine fleet and ramp up its military infrastructure across the Arctic. These actions have led to a direct challenge to NATO and the US, whose interests are now increasingly tied to the fate of Greenland. But it's not just about military power. The Arctic is also becoming a key economic battleground. The thawing of Arctic ice opens up new shipping routes and exposes previously inaccessible natural resources, including oil, gas, and rare earth minerals. China, with its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, is already eyeing the Polar Silk Road, which would give it unparalleled access to these resources and further destabilize global trade. As Greenland becomes the focal point of this geopolitical struggle, the global community is forced to reckon with its role in this changing world order. Will NATO and its allies rise to defend the Arctic, or will China and Russia seize the opportunity to reshape the future of the region for their own gain? The stakes couldn't be higher. The future of the Arctic and of global security depends on the decisions made today. Stick with us as we explore what the future could hold in this high-stakes geopolitical game. What's next for Greenland and its place in global geopolitics? Let's explore three possible scenarios, each with its own implications for the US, NATO, and the world. Scenario 1. The ideal outcome, a strong US-Greenland partnership. In this scenario, Greenland remains firmly aligned with the US and NATO. The strategic importance of Greenland continues to be acknowledged, and the US invests in strengthening its military presence on the island. Denmark supports the partnership, and Greenland maintains its sovereignty while benefiting from the economic opportunities that come with the US alliance. This would secure the Golden Dome missile shield, protect the Arctic from adversarial powers, and ensure that the US maintains its dominance in space and missile defense. In this future, Greenland's people thrive, their sovereignty is respected, and the island remains a critical component of global security. It's a win-win for everyone involved, and it preserves peace in the Arctic for years to come. Scenario 2, the middle ground, a fragile balance. In the second scenario, Greenland continues to be courted by both the US and China, but the balance is fragile. Greenland's sovereignty remains intact, but tensions mount as the island is forced to navigate between competing superpowers. This scenario brings about a diplomatic balancing act, with Greenland attempting to maintain neutral ground while benefiting economically from both sides. However, this precarious balance leaves Greenland vulnerable to economic and political pressure as it becomes more difficult to keep both the US and China satisfied. The risk of conflict in the Arctic increases, and the possibility of a new Cold War between East and West becomes more likely. Greenland's future would be uncertain, but it would serve as a buffer zone in an increasingly polarized world. Scenario 3. The worst outcome, Greenland falls into China's orbit. In the worst-case scenario, Greenland's sovereignty is compromised, and the island aligns more closely with China. This scenario sees Greenland falling under the influence of China's Belt and Road Initiative, with Chinese investments flooding in. US military presence diminishes, and China gains control over the strategic Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom GIUK gap. In this future, Greenland becomes a Chinese outpost in the Arctic, giving China a direct advantage in the Cold War for global dominance. The US and NATO lose their foothold in the region, leaving the Arctic wide open for Chinese and Russian influence. This shift could lead to significant geopolitical instability, with global trade routes becoming more vulnerable and military tension escalating between superpowers. As we look ahead, the question is clear. What will the world do about Greenland? The stakes are higher than ever. Greenland is not just a piece of land. It's the linchpin of global security in the Arctic. The decisions made by Greenland, Denmark, NATO, and the US will echo through history. If Greenland remains firmly aligned with the US, we secure the Golden Dome and ensure that the Arctic stays a free zone for democracies and allied nations. NATO can continue its vital work in the region, and Greenland will thrive as a critical partner in defense and trade. But if we fail, if Greenland falls into the hands of adversaries, whether it's China or Russia, we risk losing control over the most vital geopolitical real estate in the world. The Arctic would become a battleground, and US military dominance would be severely compromised. This is not just about Greenland. This is about America's defense, the future of NATO, and the balance of power in the Arctic and beyond. The world is watching. The time to act is now. So what will it be? Will we protect Greenland, or will we allow it to slip away? The choice is ours, and the world's future depends on it.